Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 16th meeting of the Mayor and Council of Princeton. And we'll start the meeting with the reading of the statement concerning the notice of the meeting.
Notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act and state regulations governing remote public meetings, including the time, date, and location of the meeting, and clear and concise instructions to the public for assessing the meeting and making comment. In addition, the agenda and all related materials were posted electronically and made available to the public on Princeton's meeting portal in advance of the meeting.
Thank you, Dawn. Could we have the roll call, please?
Sure. Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Here.
Ms. Niedergang?
Here.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Ms. Fraga?
Here.
Mr. Williamson?
Here.
Ms. Sachs? Mayor Frida?
Here. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our reorganization meeting on January 4th of this year. Does someone want to make a motion? David? Leticia seconding? Any questions or any comments on the minutes? If not, all in favor? Dawn, can we do that by a voice vote, or?
You could just do it all at once.
Okay,
Yeah,
all in
just need a
favor,
roll.
please.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Next up is announcements and reports. Council members have announcement. Leticia?
Yes, just one very quick announcement. This coming Saturday at 9 a.m., the Permit Parking Task Force is going to be hosting a community meeting in the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood. And this is to discuss the residential parking permits. We'll also be discussing restriction on the number of hours that one can park without a permit. We'll be providing an overview of the permitting and parking enforcement technology, and also discussing possibly providing a limited number of parking permits for local employees, those who work locally. The link to join the meeting is on the municipal calendar. Again, that's Saturday starting at 9 a.m. and it's going to be hosted by members of the task force and led by Councilman Cohen, Councilwoman Perron-Lambros, and myself will be hosting along with other members of the task force.
Thank you. Are there other council announcements or reports, David?
Yeah, just a brief report from the Stormwater and Flood Committee, the subcommittee that's been working on crafting a redevelopment stormwater ordinance has a draft ready. We have meetings with community stakeholders scheduled for this coming Thursday for some input, and we hope to be bringing the ordinance to council in the next couple of meetings.
Thank you. Eve?
Yes, just one announcement. I believe that it was just at our previous meeting that I indicated that we were going to form a cannabis task force. And we've been working on that, Councilwoman Perron-Lambros and Council President Fraga. And we will have the application to be a member of the task force up on the website tomorrow. Just a tiny little tinkering of wording that still needs to be done. So if you're interested or you know someone who would be interested, please apply. We'd love to get a wide variety of views on this issue, which is very important to many people and to the town. So
just some clarification on that, if I may, Mayor. Eve, are some people de facto members, or I'm thinking of people like Gary de Blasio over at.
We have certain members, certain parts of the government will automatically be represented. For example, Corner House, Gary has already designated who he would like.
Okay, just want to make sure.
There'll be a representative from the police, from either health department, more likely Board of Health. I'm trying to remember the other institutional parts of the government that will be.
Human Services and Civil Rights Commission as well.
I think we decided against human services, but definitely
Oh, did we? Okay, sorry.
civil rights.
Civil rights, definitely.
And then there will be, before Michelle points this out, there'll be representatives from the merchant community, from our downtown businesses and other businesses. And then there'll be some spots just for ad hoc people who, in the community who are interested. If you have any input on that, any, group that you think should be represented, I'll send around an email to everyone with the list we have so far. Still
Sure.
work in progress. So.
Thanks.
If I could just say thank you to Councilwoman Niedergang for taking the lead on putting this together. It's great. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
We have other council reports or announcements? Mia?
Yeah, Councilman Cohen and Councilwoman Perrin-Lambros and I have been working for the past week on a letter which we've circulated to council, and it's expressing concerns about a bill that's in the legislature. It's A 1571 that would impact our affordable housing settlement in a very severely detrimental way. And so we've been in a lot of different meetings with other elected municipal officials across the state in the past week, and with the League of Municipalities. So based on all of that, everything that we've learned in the past week, we came up with just a letter about our situation and how just to let we met with both of our representatives, Zwicker and Fryman, who were made themselves accessible, and we really appreciated that. So we've met with our attorneys and financial advisors. So we came up with a letter that is just a page and a half, despite all of those meetings, to reflect how we, our concerns and how this would impact us. And so I circulated it to council, the latest version. I just wanted to get I think Trishka said, just ask for a consensus of whether people are.
Yes, consensus is fine.
So if there's their consensus. Okay.
Is there anyone that has a problem with the letter, of sending the letter? And also there's another form for there's a mayor sign off against the bill also that would be part of the same idea here.
And there's only one person who I know who can sign that. So.
Thank you for your work on this. Really appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mia.
Other council announcements or reports? Okay, do we have staff? Any staff reports or announcements? Deanna?
You're still
Can't hear you, Deanna. Sorry.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to share my screen and give council just a quick update on a variety of utility projects that engineering has become aware of. So I'm just going to flip through a quick slideshow. And so first off, as you may recall, we had the presentation by PSE&G. They are looking to start work in the Riverside neighborhood in March of 2021. And then we're also coordinating with them for some work in the middle of Princeton, especially related to the Bank Street project at this point. PSE&G Electric has also reached out to us recently about a few different projects. One project that they're actively working on is a fiber project to make it possible for their substations to communicate with each other. In the past, I think they've used other providers like an AT&T or a Verizon, and now they are taking this upon themselves with their own system of fiber. So they have two projects that are proposed. One would connect the Princeton substation on Wiggins Street to the Montgomery Township substation up on 206. And the route that would take would be Wiggins to Witherspoon to Cherry Hill Road and then up 206. This would be an aerial project. So just making that clear. There's also another project which would connect the Princeton substation to West Windsor. And I've left out a few streets, but the general direction is Wiggins to Walnut to Terhune, and then over to Harrison, not Hamilton. I apologize for that typo. And then Harrison out to West Windsor. There's also an underground electric project on Witherspoon at Wiggins, from Wiggins to Green Street. There's also an investigation of the downtown underground system with the outage that they experienced on Wholefish and the chambers, and other outages that have occurred in recent years. PSE&G has committed to investigate their downtown system for us. There's also an aerial project in Lawrence Township that will have some traffic detours into Princeton on 206 Elm and Rosedale. That part of the project is looking to be in about the April timeframe. But the rest of this work they're looking to get started with in March. Just was notified last week from New Jersey American with the list of roads that they will be impacting with water main replacements. Terhune Road has been on the list since last year because of a series of main breaks that we've had in the past few years. It's also an opportune time to coordinate with a capital improvement project on Terhune in the next year or two. In addition to that, we've got Stanley Avenue, Levitt Lane, and Fisher Avenue. I don't have a start date yet, but as those projects progress, we'll create project web pages on the municipal website and have public meetings to make everybody more familiar with the work and the impacts. And then finally, there's miscellaneous utility construction that's ongoing. There's some underground fiber installation in Palmer Square that started last week. There's underground electrical installation that will be occurring to serve the post office property. We'll have Verizon coming in with 5G applications, and we're looking to come to council in March to give a presentation on 5G, and we'll be bringing with us Dr. Eisenstein, who is our consultant for radio frequencies and wireless systems. And then we also have AT&T has a proposed 4G, 5G pole on Witherspoon Street. The utility companies are also doing some inspection of utility poles, and there is a pole replacement program. So a lot of activity. The engineering department is tasked with providing opening permits, utility opening permits for work in the right-of-way, and then the police department coordinates with the variety of utility companies and their contractors with traffic control for this work and establishing the hours of operation and construction. So that's just a quick overview of the variety of utility projects that have been coming our way. Yes, David?
In terms of the PSE&G fiber, the line that's going to West Windsor seems to be going in the wrong direction for a bit. Is that to keep it above ground?
It is to minimize the number of new utility poles. So they are trying to establish the line on existing utility poles. And so, yes, they have to go a little bit north to go south.
Okay.
Yeah. And then just on a municipal note for our Bank Street project, as you may be aware, that was supposed to have started at the beginning of February. With all of the weather issues that we've had over the last 10 to 12 days, work has been delayed, but we anticipate that construction will start next Monday. And I think the weather is looking better next week. So hopefully that can be a start date and then continuous operation from there. That's my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. Mia?
Yeah, I'm sure you get all of the same complaints that the rest of us do about the cell phone service. And I'm just wondering, you know, and I know many residents have reached out to Verizon, and we've reached out to Verizon, and nobody ever seems to know why. There are all sorts of urban legends floating around that, you know, they took a tower down and they didn't know it, or it's because residents didn't like the look of them and so they didn't put it. I don't know. So anyway, I'm just wondering, do we actually know why we have such abysmal cell service in Princeton? And is there any chance that the work, the upgrade will improve it?
I think we just have holes in the service. I don't know why. I mean, that's more up to the providers as to where they have coverage and facilities. I'm not aware that it's linked to the removal of anything. We have been in conversations with Verizon specifically because we do have low service near Governor's Lane off of Terhune, and also at 300 Elm Court. We are working through the science to determine if 5G would be the solution to help their service. We're tending to think that it's not, and so we are pushing to see if the 4G coverage can be expanded in those areas to give them the coverage that they desperately need.
So Deanna, could we warn them when they come before us to talk about their latest project that we're going to ask them questions about this, and maybe they could prep for that and help us solve that?
Yes, we will definitely do that.
Thank you. Leticia?
Yes, well, I assume that it's going to be when Verizon comes before council with their presentation, they'll go into more detail. But I was wondering, in what you listed, it indicates that the 5G being considered for the middle of Princeton, and is that just the central business district, or does it also include residential areas?
It definitely includes residential areas. It's roughly from Nassau Street to Valley Terhune, so north and south, and then Bayard to the shopping center.
Okay.
Are really the limits. So that's how I define the middle of Princeton.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have other staff reports or announcements? All right. Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is recognizing members of some of the BCCs. And Michelle, do you want to start that?
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. Thank you. I just would like to recognize all of the members of the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee that did a lot of work over the years on helping us with benchmarking, with analyzing, and looking at all the various financial aspects. So I'd like to recognize each one of them, and that's including Chris Fistonich, Roger Shatskin, Mara Francesi, Will Dove, and Julie Ramirez as members of the committee. We thank you very much. And then we have to give a very special thanks to the fearless leader there, which was Scott Stillers, who did many years of service and work for us. So Scott, we really appreciate all of you and all that you've done. And, you know, we're still here, you know, we're doing our financial, you know, work, and anyone who's, you know, more than welcome if you have the time. I know Scott was moving on to do some other things, but if you find that you have the time and would like to help us with an analysis, it's always open. The door is always open here. for your citizen involvement. But we'd just like to thank you. I'm sure Councilman Cohen may like to say a few words, and then I'll also open it to Mr. DeShield and Ms. Webb if they would like to also say something. But thank you all.
Thanks, Michelle. I mean, I think you covered it really well for Citizens Finance Advisory. I have a couple of groups that I've been working with where I'd like to recognize long-serving members who helped the community have come off this year. For the Historic Preservation Commission, that would include Robert von Zumbush and Cecilia Taslar, who both offered a lot of expertise. Cecilia was the vice chair of the HPC for quite a few years. So we really thank them for their service. And on the Site Plan Review Advisory Board, members who came off this year was the long-serving chair, Bill Wolf, whose service I, as a long-standing member of the Planning Board, really appreciate. I found the SPRAB reports over the years to be among the most useful input that we've received as planning board members to help us understand and best shape the applications that come before us. And Rob Cerruti is another member of SPRAB who came off this year. So many thanks to those four individuals.
Okay. Mark, should we jump to you? Any comments?
Yes. First, I'd like to just thank all of the members of CFAC for all of the work they've done in assisting us in preparation for our budget each year. You really made the process a lot easier for us in doing the different analysis that you did. But in particular, I just do want to take the time to thank Scott Sillers for really taking the time. Municipal finance is not always logical, and taking time to understand that it is not always logical, and really working with us and listening was outstanding person to work with, and I really do appreciate all of your help throughout the years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. Leticia?
Yes, I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to acknowledge and thank Ross Wishnick, who was a long-time member of the Human Services Commission and its chair for about a decade. But he just stepped off the commission this year, and everybody that knows Ross knows he's very involved in the community, and we expect him to still be involved and still, yeah, we'll still be hearing from him. But I want to thank him for his, on behalf of the mayor and council, for all his work and his service on the Human Services Commission.
Okay, thank you. Eve?
I was wondering if maybe Sandy wanted to say something about CFAC, and then if she does, and then I'll go after you, Sandy.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Eve. Yeah, it was a lot of what Mark said was right on. I mean, they were an outstanding group to work with. As he said, municipal finance is not like normal finance if you've ever worked in the finance field. So they made it really as painless as it could be in the process, from budget to bonding to capital projects. They really helped Mark and I out a lot. And so I want to say thank you personally to them, and especially to Scott as well.
Thank you, Sandy. Eve?
All right, thank you. We actually lost two members of the Princeton Environmental Commission at the end of 2020. So I have some words that I've worked on along with the current chair of the Environmental Commission, Tammy Sands, who's here with us tonight. As a graduate student in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology, Zoe Volenick focused on the open space landscape in New Jersey and the creation of a comprehensive open space map for this region. Zoe used that expertise to create an open space assessment for Princeton. And despite having relocated to Colorado, she continues to support her successor, also a Princeton University student, as this effort continues. PEC Chair Tammy Sands says about Zoe, quote, It was wonderful to have the younger generation engaging with the Environmental Commission. We could always count on Zoe. When she agreed to support a goal, she certainly delivered. Thank you, Zoe, for all your efforts and the valuable data that you have so graciously handed over. And I want to just join Tammy in extending our thanks to Zoe for the contributions that she made to the Environmental Commission and to Princeton. I know she's here from Colorado. So thank you, Zoe, and welcome. I hope maybe not a final time. And we also said goodbye to Sophie Glovier, who was the chair of the Environmental Commission. Sophie served as chair of the PEC for 4 years. Sophie combines astute leadership with a passion for the environment and the extraordinary ability to run a very tight meeting. She has not only mentored new members of the Environmental Commission, but she also mentored me when I joined as council liaison. So I have a personal debt to her. PEC Chair Tammy Sands points out that, quote, Sophie has been an exceptional role model in her respectful ease of connection with our community members. Sophie's tireless dedication to local environmental concerns and beyond have been paramount in advancing PEC to the next level. And I realize I have big shoes to fill. This is again from Tammy, but knowing Sophie is only a call or a walk in the woods away feels reassuring. So Sophie, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for your wonderful commitment. And I know, as a member of the watershed team, advocacy team, you're going to continue to work for the best. And as a resident, of course, you're going to continue to work for the best of Princeton. So thank you both.
Thank you, Eve. Do we have any other council members? Have any other comments for any of the other BCCs? I think we just say overall that for any number of reasons, people come and go on the different BCCs, and it's a big help to the community for their time and effort, which in many cases is pretty significant. So it's nice for us each year to just say thank you to the people that served, no matter how long it may have been. And for some of them, it was quite a while. So thank you to all of them. Okay, we'll move on. I believe the next item is a presentation by the chair of the Princeton Sewer Operating Committee. David Goldfarb is going to talk to us about sewers.
Good evening. I'm David Goldfarb, chair of the Princeton Sewer Operating Committee, the PSOC. My address is 1 Markham Road, apartment 3E. When you thought about running for local office, and when you raised your right hand to be sworn in, you probably didn't think about assuming responsibility for the operation of Princeton's sanitary sewer system. Under Princeton's form of government, however, you are responsible. The mayor and council must devote more of Princeton's resources to its sewers in order for you to meet those responsibilities. From the inception of the PSOC until consolidation, Princeton Borough operated the PSOC on behalf of the borough and Princeton Township. The borough hired a series of sewer managers who were directly responsible for the day-to-day management of the sewers. Under consolidation, Princeton eliminated the position of sewer manager. The PSOC was subsumed within the Department of Infrastructure and Operations. The Director of Infrastructure and Operations became responsible not only for the day-to-day management of the PSOC, but also for Princeton's roads, vehicles, buildings, trees, public works, and parking. This took away required supervision from sewer operations. Maintenance has been deferred and the system is in disrepair. It is now very clear that this model of the management of the PSOC failed and that Princeton's aging sewer system demands a greater commitment. More than a year after the Director of Infrastructure and Operations left, Princeton posted a sewer manager position, but it remains unfilled. For more than 18 months, Princeton has not had a licensed sewer operator, which is required under the rules and regulations of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. The illegal dumping at the River Road landfill in 2019 was a clear warning that Princeton was not paying sufficient attention to the PSOC. Princeton must commit the appropriate resources, including increased staffing, in order to operate and maintain the sewer system properly. Andrew Philippi, Princeton sewer engineer, sent you a copy of a memo outlining requirements to staff the operation of Princeton sewers adequately. I endorse his recommendations. Princeton hired Andrew to identify and plan for the removal of inflow and infiltration, I&I, mostly clean groundwater that leaks into our sewer system and then flows to the sewage treatment plant. The treatment of these extraneous flows is wasteful and expensive. Without adequate management support, Andrew has been forced to devote most of his time just to keep the PSOC going instead of on the tasks for which he was hired. Andrew's memo contains several other examples of how adequate staffing would lead to more efficient and effective use of municipal resources. I urge you to read it carefully and to act on Andrew's recommendations. The mayor and council must commit the resources to operate and maintain our sewer system properly. Sewers are an essential part of our municipal infrastructure. You are responsible for them. Thank you. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
David, thank you very much. Mia?
Well, David, actually, when I ran for office, I did talk about the sewer. And when I took the oath of office, I specifically mentioned you and my commitment to the sewer. So just want to let you know that there's one exception. There may be one or more exceptions to that. But and in fact, I'm not liaison, so I'll let Eve sort of, talk more in detail about what's going on. But I did ask at the budget meeting, the goal setting meeting that we had, and I was told that it is now entrenched. It is the significance and the prioritization that is needed is reflected in a line item in the budget. But now after hearing what you've said, and I admit I didn't get to read Andrew's memo as carefully as I would like. I'm going to go back and read it in detail, but I did look through it. I would really like to know, it seems like the one line item in the budget that we discussed last week at the goal setting session is not sufficient. And I would like to know, what do we need to, what can we do tonight? Is it a resolution? Is it an ordinance? Is there, what are the immediate steps? I think, because, I think you have to spell it out for us, because somehow it's still not happening.
Well, Andrew did spell it out. Andrew laid out a staffing structure that works. If it's not the one that you adopt, you have to be able to convince people that your structure works. The structure we have in place now does not work. So what's required is for the mayor and council to guide the administration in preparing the budget to start to staff adequately. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to be hired tomorrow or even in 2021. What it means is we have to think about increasing staffing, getting people in the right positions so that the sewer system can get the attention that it needs. It's long overdue.
Okay.
Thank you. Dave?
Thank you.
Sorry, David had his hand up.
Yeah, so I will say, and I feel comfortable asking you this question, David, because you did serve as a councilman for many years, so you appreciate the importance of how we fund these things. Andrew's memo does not address the funding question. And so my question to you is, how much of this new staffing can be supported by the sewer connection trust fund or the sewer connection fund? How much of it has to be supported out of sewer operating fees? And do you anticipate any of it being funded out of general tax revenues?
Well, the easy answer to the last question is no, it is not supported by general tax revenues because not everybody in Princeton has sewers, and it's not fair to assess people who don't have sewers for the cost of operating the sewer system. So there are two sources of funding. You identified them both. There's the sewer trust fund and there are sewer fees. The sewer trust fund has been devoted to capital projects, and I strongly recommend that that continue because revenues for the sewer trust fund are unpredictable, and therefore to use them for operating expenses just creates large fluctuations in the sewer fee. But yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just want to interrupt for a sec because it looked to me like Andrew's proposal lumped together capital and ongoing maintenance in his staffing proposal. So,
right, and I suppose if you want to be technical, and if it works out from a budgetary point of view, you could argue that if we have people on the staff doing capital work, that work could be funded by the sewer trust fund, because we would otherwise use the sewer trust fund to hire independent private contractors to do that work. So yes, that's defensible to have the sewer trust fund pay for the capital expenses associated with staff people working on capital projects. But there's no question that sewer fees are going to have to increase if we staff the sewer operations properly. There are some efficiencies, but increasing the staffing is not going to pay for itself. But it is now being staffed in a way that is irresponsible. We're not doing what needs to be done. And there are many things that I could point to. I mentioned a few in my presentation, but there are others. We need to have the proper staffing, and whatever it takes is going to have to come from the sewer fees. Now, I would mention, and it's of great significance to me personally, that sewer fees are paid by the nonprofits as well as by homeowners. Anybody who has a sewer connection in Princeton pays the sewer fees, and our largest sewer user is Princeton University. So it's a different group of people, and it's in different proportions from taxes. And to some extent, it is fairer because people can reduce their sewer fees by reducing their water usage. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this can all be done for free and that the sewer users aren't going to have to pay more. They will have to pay more.
Thank you. Eve is next.
Thank you, David, for your ongoing commitment. I know it probably sometimes seems like you're a lonely voice crying out in the wilderness, but I really appreciate your dedication. I appreciate your voice. I'm hoping that finally that we'll be able to take action on these recommendations. So just to respond to something a little bit that both Mia and David said, Andrew's memo, which was really appreciated, really laid everything out in great detail, what the needs are, seemed very reasonable to me. I do have some questions I'll get to in a minute about the cost. But Andrew's suggestion was for this year to hire 3 additional people. In the long run, he sees a much more dramatic increase, but I think 3 positions in 2021 seems like a reasonable achievement. And so, I hope that, we can move forward on that. So Andrew, and I hope please, is that accurate? Am I reading that right? Was that 3 in 2021?
That's exactly right. For an actual increase of 2, we expect one of our staff members to retire within about a year's time.
Okay, because I read it just seemed like, as I got further into your memo, because you were proposing such a vast increase, I was like, how can we even, train and acculturate this many employees? But we're starting one step in the right direction. So I just want to say a little bit more about what David said about this. As he said, this is not going to be cheap. So there are a couple of cost saving. A couple of areas where we'll save money. One is that if we can stop the I&I or reduce the I&I, the infiltration and inflow, the amount of water we send to the plant decreases. And so our costs decrease also, which was in the memo. And both David and Andrew have mentioned a couple of times, but didn't get brought out tonight, is that eventually our facility, the sewer operating plant is going to need to be replaced. And that's going to be a major, very expensive undertaking. If we can put that off for a few years, that'll be great. So by reducing the amount of water that we're sending to them as waste that needs to be cleaned, especially since some of it was cleaned before it worked its way into the pipes, we can postpone that long-term capital expense. And then something that Andrew also went into in some detail in his memo, and please, correct me if I'm wrong, is that right now we are, most of our sewer work is being done by contract. And some of that, is a wash, in terms of like if we're contracting it out, we don't have to supervise in the same way. So there are some cost reductions there. But they're adding, I think Andrew threw out the number of 10%. They're adding, 10% because that's their profit. And then it takes time to do the proposals, to do the RFPs and everything. So all in all, I think it looks like we can save significant sums of money by doing this in-house. Now, here's my question. What I'd love to see, and Andrew, I don't know if maybe you work with Sandy on this, or David, if you play a role. I'd love to see some details on, what the costs are going to be for some of this. Like if we reduce I&I by whatever, 20% or 30%, what are the cost savings there? If we do our sewer work in-house, we do whatever, a percentage of our sewer work in-house, how much money are we saving? And it seems like you would probably have the data to do that. And I think that would be, a helpful impetus for council and to communicate with the public that, yes, this is a large amount of money, but this is something where there will be some savings on this investment. And like anything else that we use, it needs to be taken care of, just like our roads. And so my question is, the sewer fees, is this something, and I guess David and maybe Mark DeShields know the answer to that. How do we go about changing them and setting them? Is this controlled by the state in any way? Do we just decide we want it to go up? And Sandy, you're appearing, so I'm assuming you have an answer. If someone could talk a little bit about that, what is the mechanism for revising the sewer fees and for raising the fees, if that's what we need to do to get this work done?
I'll take a shot and I'll let Sandy correct anything that I say that's incorrect. The sewer fee is set by the mayor and council by ordinance. It's done in conjunction with the sewer budget. It's, whatever we need to raise to operate the sewers that we don't have from other sources becomes the sewer fee. So that's it in a nutshell. And it is not regulated by the state per se, except that it needs to be fair. In other words, you can't raise money from sewer users and use the revenue to pay for anything other than sewers. But we have complete latitude to set the sewer fee wherever we think it's appropriate. And we, of course, have made many changes in the sewer rate over the years.
When was the last time it was changed?
Probably a couple of years ago, because it's based on the actual usage reports that we get from American Water. So we're in the process of reviewing those reports right now. As David had mentioned, once we firm up what the number is for the sewer operating for their budget for this year, then we'll go back and make a calculation and determine whether the rates are sufficient or not sufficient. So, we're sort of in that process right now.
Okay.
I will say that I'll correct one thing that I said that may not be 100% correct, and that is we can't use sewer fees for anything other than sewers, but a portion of the administrator's time is spent on sewers, a portion of Sandy's time is spent on sewers. So, the same way that the federal government allows research institutions to charge a certain amount of overhead to the research project, Princeton could certainly charge a certain amount of overhead on the sewers and use that to support the general municipal budget.
Okay, Michelle had her hand up, and then we'll go to David after Michelle.
I'll just make it really brief, but David, thank you so much for being persistent. I think every year you come before council and pretty much give the same, synopsis. And I think, I feel very strongly that we really need to sit down and look at, we've got some money in the sewer trust fund. We have the opportunity right now to look at the budget and see how can we get some things done. So I think that, penny wise and pound foolish, the more we kick this forward, the more it's going to cost in the long run. And so I do feel very dedicated to trying to work with Eve, with you, with the group and finance committee and try and get something done. So I'll leave it at that. And I thank you very much for being so persistent and being here and dedicated to the sewers. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome, but
Thank you, David.
Last year when I made my presentation, I didn't want to focus a lot on the landfill situation. It was still being litigated. But that was if you ignore that, that was a clear symptom of the problems that I'm talking about. You saw that there were direct consequences. It cost the town a lot of money. It involved a lot of staff. I'm trying to sort it all out. People are under criminal indictment. I don't know the status. But the point here is that was part of the responsibilities that fall within sewers generally. And that glaring oversight is a symptom of the glaring oversight that our entire sewer system has been subjected to all of these years. You're now aware of it in a way that you just simply can't ignore. And I don't want to be coming back again next year and saying the same thing. It is now time to deal with it now.
Thank you, David. David Cohen, I think you had your hand up.
Okay, so I wanted to sort of answer Mia's question that started off saying, what do we need to do to actually take action? I think what we need to do is we need to have a 5-year plan for implementation of Andrew's recommendations. And it needs to be with the dollars. How much do we need to raise? How much will we save? That's got to be the next step. And I think Scott Sillers is still an attendee. And Michelle talked about bringing CFAC folk out of retirement. I think this would be an excellent thing to get his input on in terms of how to work this, because there are a lot of moving parts when you think about the finances of this. So if there's anything coming out of this meeting, I'd like to have a consensus from council that is the next step.
Right. David, I would also say to get very granular that the Infrastructure and Operations Committee should probably meet with Andrew immediately, review the email, which is an excellent email, Andrew, and thank you very much for that. I mean, it's an outstanding piece of work, but should review that with Andrew to make sure there's clear understanding on what the immediate needs are and what things are going to be phased over to get into your 5-year plan. I would also suggest that the Personnel Committee look and see what vacant positions are budgeted that we could focus on immediately. If they're in the budget, let's figure out how to get them advertised and get people to apply for them. If people aren't applying for our positions, we need to figure out why, whether the salary's too low or I don't know what it is, but let's find out if that's the case. So I think those two committees could start doing things right away. And then of course, it is going to all tie back to finance at some point because we do have to pay for it. So anyway.
Yeah, I was just going to add, if I may, Mayor, sure, that I don't know, David Cohen, if it necessarily needs to be a 5-year plan, because the question is going back to what Mayor Fried is saying. I mean, there's a question of what things are needed immediately. I don't know if we have to set it as 5 years. Is my point. I don't know if it needs to be a shorter plan to meet immediate goals. I know for the short time I have been here on council, Mr. Goldfarb often talks about what money we lose because of fresh water being processed also. I didn't get a chance to go through Andrew's memo 100% yet. I did look at it. But I'm not sure if included in there anywhere is if we get the sewers working right, how much money we would save versus what the cost would be to hire more employees and basically juxtapose those two different issues. I don't know if that was mentioned at all. And then a third thing is Mr. Goldfarb also mentioned about university usage. This may become an issue of maybe future negotiations with the university, but if we could kind of get a clear idea of, and this is me not being an expert on how sewers are financed at all, but maybe if we can get a better idea of is a university, what I'm getting at, if it would be great if we can find out if the university is paying its fair share when it comes to sewer usage, and so that factor can be included in any future negotiations with the university on things like the pilot, et cetera.
The answer to that, Mr. Williamson, is yes, the university is paying its fair share of sewer usage. Not anything else necessarily, but they are paying their fair share of sewers.
Right. Thanks. And I'll add to what my council colleague said, is I really do appreciate your continued advocacy for something very important. I was going to say about something that goes on the ground sometimes, but I don't want to make any bad puns. But it is really important.
Well, you hit on an important point, which is that you're not hearing from the residents because they don't see the problems. They see the potholes in the streets. They are aware of a lot of things in town that could be improved. They do not see the sewers, and they're not aware of a problem unless there's a leak or a backup. Mm-hmm. And that makes it necessary for the mayor and council to take a leading role. For you to tell the residents, not for them to tell you. This has to be done.
Yeah, we have to certainly take some leadership there. Thanks.
Thank you, David. I'm sorry. So, David Cohen, did you want to come back to?
I just wanted to comment in response to Dwayne that I set a 5-year plan because I think Andrew's memo called for an increase of about 15 employees total. And if we're doing 3 employees this year, I just extrapolated that out to be a 5-year plan. If we can do it in fewer years, great.
I've got a couple of comments on that. One is that I would love to add them all as quickly as possible. One of the issues that we have is our facilities, right? Where will they sit? Where will they stay? Or they check in the morning? We don't have the space for that many people right now. And we are planning on a forthcoming facilities study. And for the sewer focused staff, the SOC staff, a large part of our analysis will be based on our potential stormwater utility staffing levels, because there are a lot of shared skills between storm and sanitary sewer systems, shared equipment. And so if we're all going to be housing those folks in the same area, then we want to plan on having a space that's large enough for everyone instead of building too small, or certainly from building too large. And then also just very round numbers, we spend roughly $5 million annually just to pay Stony Brook Regional Sewerage Authority to treat our wastewater. Roughly a half of the wastewater that's being sent from Princeton alone is I&I, meaning it's not actually sewage, but we're still getting billed for it. Now, one, it's not possible to remove 100% of I&I. And then 2, any reduction in our I&I is not going to be quite a one-to-one reduction in what we're paying, because we're not the only user. But that's still a very significant amount of potential savings. And then also our annual capital budget averages roughly $3 million. And I had not done an extensive analysis of potential savings conducting work in-house versus hiring contractors. But if we were to say 10%, which I'm not going to say that's the right number, but that's a significant amount of money because we're already working with such large budgets to begin with. And then, again, round numbers, adding a staff member would increase our total budget by about 1% annually. And so that would be reflected in the sewer usage fees. So.
Thank you, Andrew. Any other, Eve?
I just want to say thank you, Andrew. And again, thank you. I know this is not what you were hired to do. And we really value your work. This memo is fabulous, really helpful, and just stick with us, please. And again, thank you, David, for this. And we're all going to have to continue talking about, how we get this done and get this done in the short term. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Goldfarb or Andrew or engineer?
David, I think we have a plan of action between, adding staff, which we can discuss at personnel, meeting with Andrew and INO, and looking at the sewer fees in the finance committee. We have some immediate next steps. We'll keep you posted. I hope that next year, when you come back, it will be to tell us how excited you are that we've gotten so much done. So
I hope so too. Thank you very much.
We'll work on it.
Thank you, David. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, moving on. Are there public comments for items not on the agenda? Any members of the public that have an item not on the agenda they want to bring up? All right, seeing no one raising their hand, we'll close the public comments section of the meeting. And the next item is the work session on Witherspoon Street, Nassau to Green design work.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to share my screen. I have a few slides to show you our latest progress. Okay. So I think the last time, we were here with council in October. We were back with council in December to talk about the ordinance to create a one-way roadway on Witherspoon Street. Since that time, I've been working with our traffic engineer, T&M, our design engineering team firm, and then also with the Historic Preservation Commission. So starting with our traffic updates, McMahon Associates has been reviewing the Van Divender Nassau Washington signal for us. This has been one of the sticking points in moving traffic through Princeton. We've made great strides to accommodate the pedestrians at the intersection, but there has been an impact to the traffic movement. So we've looked at the timing, and we will be making a recommendation to DOT to change the signal timing. We're looking to be able to save 12 seconds on the timing. That can be distributed back to the traffic on Washington and Van Divender. The McMahon is still in the process of evaluating the South Tulane Street section of the discussion where we were looking to turn the direction of traffic on South Tulane. They're looking at the truck turning diagrams for the vehicles that move through that space, and also looking at the sight distance at Nassau Street. In a couple of weeks, we anticipate having information to be able to meet with the local businesses and property owners in that corridor.
Deanna?
Yes.
So can you just pop back to the first slide?
Sure.
I'd like to ask a couple questions.
Yeah, let me just move. There we go.
Okay, for the Van Divender Nassau Washington signal, people are in the habit of crossing diagonally now. So I would be very concerned that if this change is agreed to by DOT, that if we don't do some temporary signage or educational campaign, people will get caught in the middle of that intersection, and all of a sudden the lights are going to go green for traffic in some direction. So just as long as we're considering that, some educational aspect has to happen if we do get that traffic signal change there, I would suggest.
Yes, we have. The 19 seconds we feel comfortable is sufficient time for most pedestrians, but you're right, there may be some users of the intersection that cannot cross on the diagonal within that time. So yeah, we will definitely put together an educational campaign on that.
Okay, and then if I could just ask you on South Tulane.
Yes.
So on South Tulane, we're still seriously considering changing the flow of traffic to go from Spring to Nassau.
We are still considering it, yes.
And there are somehow people that believe, with the buildings being right up to the side, right, literally on the one side to the curb line, and on the other side you have a very narrow sidewalk, that somehow you're safely going to get traffic past those block sight lines and not have pedestrian vehicle collisions there.
That is what we are looking at now. The truck movements are possible. The pedestrian safety is what we are focusing on at this point in reviewing that change.
Okay, I'm just voicing serious concern that that's workable. But I
Mark,
just,
can you explain that? I'm sorry, just spatially, so what, just explain to me what the difference is between it going, how does that impact pedestrians, the one way as opposed to the other?
right. So today, if you're going to go on that section of Tulane, you're pulling off, you're exiting Nassau and going down Tulane, which means you can see everyone on the sidewalks before you initiate your turn. When you're coming up Tulane towards Nassau, you have buildings on both sides of you, and your view is going to be blocked. Somebody on a skateboard, a bicycle, even though they shouldn't be, somebody jogging that decides they're going to try to shoot across that intersection. The likelihood of you seeing them before they are literally at the edge of the curb or in the intersection, in my opinion, is very unlikely. So I think this just seems to be a recipe for disaster to me.
Is that, and I'm playing devil's advocate because I haven't really thought about it too much one way or another, but I mean, how is that different than any of the other many streets that intersect with Nassau and in which the cars are coming up? I mean, there are many streets in which the cars, it's one way heading south and they intersect with Nassau.
Yeah, the problem isn't it's not so much a problem necessarily because you're going from Spring to Nassau. The problem is at the intersection of Spring and Nassau, you have buildings literally on the edge of the street. Your sight lines are extremely tight, and that limited sight line situation, I can't think of another street where we have that situation. It's a narrow street, the buildings are right there. So I'm just expressing a serious concern that I'd like to see somehow how somebody explains that we can make that intersection safe for pedestrians before we change the flow of traffic. That's all. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm just saying it better be really well thought out because I think it's going to be very hard to do.
I have a question, a couple of questions.
Michelle?
Deanna, yeah, thanks. And I share that concern. And would we be taking out any parking by changing them? I mean, what is the point really to change the direction on Tulane? Is it just to funnel people away from, if they turn left on Spring going south, that they could have the option to turn on Tulane to get to Nassau before they go to Van Deventer to take congestion off of that? Because this also, if you leave it the way it is, you get people to turn from Nassau into where Spring Street is, as opposed to just having Washington Road be the only entrance. I mean, Witherspoon Street be the only entrance. I mean,
Right.
what is the thought process of changing the direction to begin with.
The thought process is that you typically pair one-way streets with another street. And in this case, South Tulane could be the pair where you create a clockwise rotation around downtown for people that are, looking for parking or moving around. It does relieve some pressure off of Van Divender.
Yeah.
I think we saw that in the traffic study in the numbers. And those are really the two main reasons. But like Mayor Frida said, we have concerns as well about
Yeah.
the pedestrian interaction with vehicles. If vehicles were coming in a southbound direction, you would have to physically build a barrier to restrict where pedestrians can walk.
Right.
Whether
Yeah, no,
that's planters or
Yeah.
bollards, we really would need to look at that. So
Yeah. I agree with that. I see that. And then there was concern by one of the retail establishments on South Tulane that all the parking would be taken away, although I don't know why you would take away parking if you're just changing the direction. It wouldn't change the lanes unless you were taking parking away and making it two-way.
no, we're still looking at that with the truck turning diagrams, because you have to accommodate certain size vehicles, and that's one of the questions that will be going more in depth with the business owners.
Good. Okay.
As to the size of vehicles, but depending on how they make those turns, there could be the need to push back the loading zone a little bit or make some adjustments. So I can't say right now that anything's being removed. We're still looking at that.
Okay, thanks.
But it is likely that you'd have to, the loading zone by D'Angelo's would probably have to be pushed way back. And you might even lose some spaces on the other side across from that. Because if we're allowing truck traffic now on that road, to make the turn off of Spring is going to be extremely tight. They're going to need a lot of space. It's likely you're going to lose parking spaces.
Right.
Would it be possible? Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, we do already have truck traffic on South Tulane. It's just coming in a different direction. So that's what we're looking at, how the change can be accommodated.
Right, so not to belabor this, and Eve, I'm going to get to you right next, I'm sorry. But a truck coming off its lane, turning onto Spring and making a turn where there's no parking on the opposite side of the street is very different than trucks trying to turn up the Spring where there's parking on both sides of the street right now. So there's definitely an impact on parking and loading zones. Anyway, I'll be quiet. Sorry. Eve.
Just picking up on that, I hadn't realized, because I know this was in the plan we discussed a while ago, so I didn't know there were these concerns about pedestrian safety. So I'm glad we're looking into that. And this may be jumping the gun a little bit, but do we have a plan B? Like, let's say it turns out that, Mayor Frida is right and the concerns that he raised, and we absolutely can't do this. What's the alternative? Or do you not even want to waste talking about it yet?
We're not there yet. I think we would go back to the traffic study and look at what impacts were presented in the traffic study and evaluate how comfortable the council is with accepting those impacts at other intersections, as well as looking at other options.
Okay, before I think of anything else, Deanna, please move on.
Sure. Okay, moving on. Coincidentally to our project on Witherspoon Street, I think I've mentioned in the past that DOT has a project to replace the traffic signal at Witherspoon and Nassau Street. And because of the decision that council made to make Witherspoon Street one way, DOT's consultant has offered this proposed layout for the intersection that it represents that we have a one-way northbound on Witherspoon Street. And so they have made accommodations within the Nassau Street right of way to accommodate that. We will be coming to council in March for a resolution of support. DOT typically requests this of the municipality in which a project is proposed. I want to point out a few changes from existing conditions so that you
Deanna,
are
is
aware
there,
of it.
I'm sorry, is there any way to make this larger?
Yep, I can make this larger.
Yeah, thank
There
you so
go.
much.
Sure. So DOT is proposing curb extensions / bump outs at the intersections. So in front of the Fitz-Randolph gate, there is a proposal to move the curbing 8 feet into the roadway and bump it out. That would be additional pedestrian space. And at the corners by Hamilton Jewelers and Bank of America, they are also proposing bump outs into Nassau Street. And that would help bring the pedestrians more visible into the intersection. That's one of the main benefits of having these bump outs, is that the pedestrians are more visible at the edge of lanes rather than being back, at the side of the parked vehicles. So this is the big change that is in their proposal. You'll also see on the southbound side of Nassau Street where we had kind of 2 lanes. One was a straight lane and then one allowed for the turning movements onto Witherspoon Street. They've consolidated that into 1 lane rather than having that as the 2 lanes. So those are the main changes. We are working with the Historic Preservation Commission subcommittee on this because historically, pardon the pun, they are not in favor of curb extensions or bump outs. One thing that we have worked with DOT's consultant on is to move the existing signal pole, which was in front of the gates, to the side. And that then opens up the view shed of the gates from the Witherspoon Street corridor. So I just wanted to bring this up to your attention because we will be seeing this again in March. And we will have to have a discussion as to whether Princeton is in support of such a change. There is no reduction in parking by these bump outs. And then if you recall, this bus stop will be replaced with parking. And I think that really covers the main points of their concept. Does anybody have any questions?
David had his hand up.
I just wanted to comment, I like this a lot better than what they had proposed last time with the 2 17-foot wide limbo lanes on, to the east of Witherspoon. So
Me too, David. Much, much better. And I'm sorry that, I understand that that HBC has, is interested in preserving the streetscape, but I guess it's always a balance, right? And I think the pedestrian safety that would result, the significantly enhanced pedestrian safety that would result from this is really worth giving serious consideration because it would make a huge difference.
But Deanna, I would just bring up one concern with the bump out on the corner there by Hamilton Jewelers, in that what many vehicles are able to do today, that side of Nassau is theoretically 1 lane, although it's in width just a little bit short of being able to be 2 lanes. So vehicles will commonly use the space when the loading zone is empty to be able to make that right onto Witherspoon, which actually helps to relieve traffic congestion on that section of Nassau. Putting that bump out there really makes that, it probably doesn't make it impossible, but it makes it a lot harder. So I actually wonder if that bump out improves pedestrian safety or actually makes it a little riskier by somebody trying to squeeze their car in there and coming close to the edge or actually going over the edge of that bump out to make that turn. So as long as somebody's taking a look at that, just to make sure that it's actually going to achieve what they think it will.
Mark, which one is that? That's if you're heading
The
west?
one that Deanna's circling right now.
Okay. Right. Yeah, no, I that's a point too.
Okay, I understand the concern there. In terms of vehicle movements, we have viewed the truck turning movements that DOT has, or DOT's consultant has prepared, and they do fit within this space, but I hear just functionally working at this area, and we'll take a look at that with them. The other thing I do want to note is by putting in the bump outs, it shortens the amount of crossing time needed, and that also helps the overall traffic movement in this area as well. So where they may have more cars queued in this area, the signal timing cycle, I think is better and can account for some of the relief of that queue.
Yep.
We'll get more details on that. Okay.
I'm sorry, Eve has her hand up. Sorry, Eve.
Yep.
Sorry, Deanna, we're going to stay on this slide for the next 2 hours. So. Sorry, bad joke. I'm wondering, is there any possibility in this situation or other similar ones of doing what I'm going to steal a term from businesses, like doing a soft open? Like, could you experiment, like have a trial for a week or two with materials that are cheap and easy to install to actually get real, at this point or somewhere in the near term, before we've gone a lot further down the path, to see what the impact will be on that, turn, the concern that Mayor Frida raised in particular? Is that ever something that's done?
Princeton can do it on our municipal roadways. We can speak with DOT to see if they would allow something like that on the state highway. But it's always great to pilot a change before it's set in concrete and asphalt. Definitely, we can provide that suggestion.
Yeah, can I say something in there? If you do a pilot like that, that is going to affect your signal timing, and they will have to tweak their signal timing too. So maybe they might not be open to that. Like, it's just 2 cents here. I think.
Yeah, we'll broach the question and see if there's impacts such as the signal timing and not being able to make the change.
All right, David, you had a question?
I just want to make a comment about this exact same bump out that we've just been talking about. I think that, I guess there's right on red that's permitted there now. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
If you're going westbound. Okay. I think that we just need to be really conscious of the fact that the way that the pedestrian traffic wants to flow here, if this is a green light for east and westbound, we can expect to have a lot of pedestrians crossing. And I think that the kind of turning maneuver that Mark was referencing, where people are turning right on red there, has a lot of potential for conflict with pedestrians who are doing what they're allowed to do. And, I personally would rather see, the sort of a long green cycle, as Deanna was referencing, for the east-west traffic. You don't need a lot of green for Witherspoon. You don't need any, because people are only entering Witherspoon. They're not exiting Witherspoon, as many of us are used to from before the pandemic. So, you could be green, almost all the time, except for when pedestrians are trying to cross Witherspoon. And at those times, you really don't want to have vehicles turning right on red.
Are you sure there's right on red there? You
There
sure?
is. Yes.
I think so.
There is.
And I just want to point out, this will be an exclusive pedestrian phase at this intersection as well. So we'll work.
The state's already agreed to that?
They have, yes.
That's good.
So we will look at the potential, how the interaction works between vehicles and this crosswalk.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why you need that slip lane that Mark was referring to. If there's never going to be pedestrians crossing while the traffic on Nassau is moving, then who's going to be using that slip lane? It only makes sense if somebody's trying to go straight westbound and somebody behind them is stuck and wants to make a right turn. But I don't know why anybody would be stuck trying to go straight. So really the traffic should just be flowing smoothly, and everyone who wants to turn right onto Witherspoon will be able to do so when it's their turn.
Right, so we should ask DOT to look at, should we eliminate the right on red there? Because it's allowed today.
We'll
And it'll be
we'll
pedestrian
confirm
only.
how that's allowed in their planning.
Right.
Okay.
Any other on this slide, or do we move on? All right, moving on.
Okay, moving on. Okay, so I just want for reference to show you the graphics that we provided back in October, so that you can see the layouts that we were considering for the one-way operation. We had approximately, I think there were 13 parking spaces in this area from Nassau to Holfish. We have a mid-block crosswalk at Tulane Yard. We had neck down at Spring Street and at Nassau Street. So moving on to our current graphic, we still have, is this my current graphic or am I still in the same picture? Here we go. I was thinking it looked the same. Okay, so here we still have the neck down at Spring Street. We still have a neck down at Nassau Street. And we have the mid-block crosswalk at South Tulane Yard. We have modified some of the road widths just to better fit within the needs of emergency services and for the truck turning maneuvers that are necessary to get in and out of this area. So our road widths range from 20 to 25 feet wide, even though it is a one-way roadway. So for those that have questioned whether we have flexibility, if for some reason we decide to make this two-way again, we do have the width to accommodate that. 20 feet is narrow, but it's possible. I think that's actually what we probably have with our lanes now, 20 to 22 feet for two-way operation. So that's what we're looking at road width. The parking numbers are the same. We have not lost any parking as we have moved through design to this point. We also, just to point out, we're moving ahead with the identification of materials to be used on the project. And so this light gray that is shown from Nassau to Spring Street actually represents pavers. And the pavers would actually be used on the sidewalk, in the parking lanes, and in the roadway. So the entire space is made up of pavers. We are looking at different colors, different sizes to distinguish between the spaces. But that is the idea, so that in the future, if there is a change to have closures, either short-term or long-term, that you would have the continuity of materials, and it would be different than, say, asphalt and concrete. The boxes that are hatched, those represent tree wells. The shaded green areas are where we are looking for green infrastructure, which is planted areas to help us detain and treat stormwater. In the areas near the restaurants in these two spaces, the sidewalk is expanding by about 4 to 4.5 feet, which would be measured from the existing curb line to the edge of this green area. So there is an expansion of that space that can be used for outdoor dining as well as a pedestrian thoroughfare. Then I'm just gonna keep going on through a few more slides. So then here is our next section. Let's see. Okay, so here is what we look like during the COVID pandemic. And we have a representation of what this could look like with pavers. We've shown this to the subcommittee of HPC that we are working with. And there was some consensus of liking the treatments that are shown. The planting material, that's all planting material. The yellow is some sort of a low ground cover. We are working with T&M Associates to identify the proper plantings for green infrastructure. In terms of tree species, T&M and our arborist have been collaborating on appropriate trees to be placed in these areas. We're looking at a darker paver on the roadway, a lighter paver on the sidewalks, and there's been some discussion that the paver on the sidewalk should have a more earthy tone to take some cues from the brick that is used in the buildings alongside. So we actually have gone back and forth with some pictures of paver samples, and once all of the snow is gone, we're looking at setting up a larger display on the street potentially that shows the different pavers and how they interact with each other. Around the planted areas, we are looking at using granite curb. On the roadside, the curb is only a couple of inches tall. And then on the back side, on the pedestrian side, it's maybe more like 6 inches. And there will be breaks in the planted areas so that if it's next to a parking stall, that people can get to their parked vehicles without trampling bushes. So this is a view of kind of what this area at this point is looking like. We do have also a street light, which we are still discussing as to what it should look like.
Deanna,
Yes.
I think Michelle has her hand up. Michelle, were you trying to ask a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, when there's a break, I didn't want to interrupt, but I just, I have some questions. It looks terrific. Is this a good time for me to ask Deanna? First of all, I mean, it's beautiful. Are you foreseeing that this would be flat from building to building, or well, you said there's a little bit of a curve, a little bit of a step up between what is kind of the sidewalk and the parking or the street itself?
Yes, there is a little bit of a step up. Like I said, on the roadside where we have the green infrastructure, there will be breaks in the curb to allow the stormwater to go into these planted areas, but we're thinking, because we do need to have an edge on the road and on the pavers, that it'll be a couple of inches high. And there will be ramps down so that it does go flush at certain points for ADA accessibility, as well as for deliveries and mobility of freight. On the backside, it may be, something like 6 inches.
Great. And well, yeah, I think you've already addressed the issue but we can talk more with the business community of where you've placed the parking. It looks like the places you need the parking, and then you've bumped it out at the places where the outdoor dining would be, and added some green space there to give a buffer. And it's just very, very nicely done. So, but we'll see. Everybody will have their input. And then my other question is, with the width being almost 2 lanes of traffic wide on the road, are you foreseeing additional parking, or how are you foreseeing this in terms of the way that it's designed right now? Because you've got substantial parking on either side, it looks like, with the bump outs or however.
We, so I'm trying to remember, I think this came up in HPC that I think we will probably end up with some double parking for deliveries. And that will be something that we need to consider and determine if that's acceptable or not. Going back to our layout, we do have parking areas designated, and we've talked about the parking spaces being managed where they operate potentially as loading areas for the morning times and then switching over to parking spaces. But you'll inevitably have, say, the garbage truck that comes through here that needs to pick up from all of the businesses along here. And so it just like it happened pre-COVID, where they would just stop in the lane and cars would drive around into oncoming traffic. It could occur that vehicles do stop in the lane. But we do have sufficient space to also get around them safely. And you don't have the conflict of oncoming traffic.
Right, because it would back it up. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, great. Okay.
David, you had a
Thank
question?
you.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on that same point, because I think it's just something we need to think about, how from a policy standpoint and from a design standpoint, we want to communicate to people how they should be using that extra width. I think people are used to having a curbside pickup function because of COVID. I think even once COVID's passed, that may be a hard habit to break. There may be a lot more takeout, and there may be this urge to just pull over for a few seconds, and maybe that's okay. But, how do you communicate that it's okay if it is okay? How do you communicate that it's not okay if it's not okay? I think I'd like to, hear some thought about that from the designers as we go forward.
Deanna, I was trying to understand. I think you said that from the edge of buildings to the edge of the green space curbing, there's an extra 4.5 feet for outdoor dining. I think that's what you said. So how does that 4.5 extra feet compare to the width of space we've given to businesses now for outdoor dining in the street? Is it the same? Is it less? What? I just want to make sure that if we allow outdoor dining on the extended width sidewalk, that we still have a sidewalk that has enough room for pedestrians.
It will be less width than they have now. Currently, I think it's 8 feet from edge of curb to face of block that they have to work with now. But the idea is that the outdoor dining can work to supplement indoor dining when we're not in COVID times. So it won't be their sole source of revenue, but an additional perk that they can offer their clientele.
Okay, so we think we can realistically limit the amount of space for outdoor dining to within that 4 feet or whatever, and not have them encroach upon the pedestrian space as much.
Yeah, it'll definitely have to be license agreements, because as you see this dotted line, the sidewalk is essentially all public property. It's a little bit different on the east side, but yes, we would be working with license agreements with the property owners. And there's also the potential in summer months council could allow a business to buy a parking space or two if additional outdoor dining space was needed. That does occur in other cities, and so that could be something under consideration here as well. And that
like
would
a-
give an extra 8 feet.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mia?
Michelle, do you have your hand up?
I was just going to say like a parklet, idea. She said taking like the parklets, right? Great.
Happens in this city too, not just in other cities.
Thank you.
Deanna,
David, not a city, a town.
I know that in many places, outdoor dining space is highly coveted. In fact, in most places, and there's a lot of competition and vying for different restaurants and retail owners to be able to utilize their outdoor space. And my understanding is that usually they pay quite a bit extra in order to have the privilege of the use of that space, because of course that generates more profits when you have additional dining space. And so I'm just wondering how that will work in Princeton.
I don't have an answer for you, but I can research it and get back to you.
Well, I mean, has it been discussed?
Well, I know we have existing sidewalk license agreements, and I would just need to research a little bit with Dolores, with the clerk's office and the zoning office, as well as planning, to get a better sense so I can respond.
But so the plan was basically to give the space for free?
No, it would be to look at our existing sidewalk cafe license agreements and determine if that is still applicable or if we would require some other mechanism.
I mean,
Right, so we don't really, this sounds like we don't really have a plan right now. So we would need to develop a plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just like to
we
say
need-
that, if businesses are using, this is public space and they're going to be generating additional profits. And it does seem that since the town is making that possible and actually putting quite a bit of money, investing quite a bit of money to make that space more desirable, that the town should realize some percentage of those profits.
Right, no, I get your
I-
point,
I-
but I'm just saying, I don't think we're going to resolve that right now. So I think it's a point that we need to come up with something. But We
Okay.
just don't have it tonight.
Great.
And I have my hand up. I just,
Sorry.
sorry. Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, I was just going to say, whatever we do for other businesses to have sidewalk cafes, we have to do the same thing. It has to be fair across the board. So whatever the rules are now, and I know there's applications and there's fees. I don't think it's a percentage of profits though. It's a fee to do it. And I think whatever we do as, ordinance now, we would have to do the same thing with all the businesses through town. It would only be fair.
Right, so why don't we agree that we're going to stick
Table
to the topic at hand? And we'll come back. We understand that we need to research this further.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Eve, I know you had your hand up. I didn't want to.
I was just going to add maybe a final word on this, which is I think we need to distinguish between what we're doing during COVID and what we would do post-COVID in terms of like right now, I'm happy to have the businesses use those spaces. Once we ever get back to quote unquote normal, then at Mia's point, that is public spaces. Yes. If they're using it to make a profit, there's some kind of fee involved in that, but maybe we'll cross the non-COVID bridge when we get there. But thanks for raising that point, Mia. I thought about that too. But.
Yep. Deanna, back to you to continue moving us along.
I will, thank you. Okay, so moving to the next comparison graphic, this is the layout from Whole Fish to Green Street that we were looking at in October and showed at council. So moving on, this is our new graphic, and it cuts off before Green Street, but I do have that to show you. So never fear. The road widths, again, range from 24 to 36.5 feet wide. We have actually an increase in the parking numbers from what we were looking at in October. It's looking like we're now around 16 instead of 14. We're still in conceptual design. I will preface it that way, but this is what we're looking at right now. The difference between this area and the first section is that we have transitioned the road space back to asphalt. So from before Spring to Nassau, the road would be pavers, starting at Spring and continuing through the rest of the project. The vehicular drive space we are looking at as asphalt, and using the pavers in the sidewalk as well as the parking stalls. Again, for that idea of a parklet that you could potentially expand into those parking spaces if that was permitted. And that really extends until Wiggins, Paul Robeson. We need to continue our conversation with HPC about the desired treatments from Paul Robeson North, because we do change historic districts, and we want to make sure that we have a complementary palette of materials that we can consistently use then from Paul Robeson all the way to the end of the Witherspoon Jackson Historic District. So we're still working on that. We've had one meeting with our subcommittee, and looking to follow up with them. And then so here's our section from around Green Street. One thing to note is that we are proposing to relocate the bus stop slightly. It would be on the other side of the match line in its existing location. And we are looking to relocate it more into this intersection area so that we can accommodate a bus shelter. The other space did not, because the underground residence, we fear, may extend into the public right of way. So we did not want to modify any of the materials too greatly in a vertical direction in that space. And so we're just slightly pushing the bus stop and the bus shelter to the north, and we will be coordinating with New Jersey Transit to make sure that that's acceptable. The other thing to note too is that we would be relocating a crosswalk which currently exists here at the corner of Green and Witherspoon by the Arts Council, and we would bring it over onto this side of the intersection to the north side. So just to go through the same details that I had before, the road, is approximately 22 to 31 and a half feet wide. And like I said, we will coordinate on our material selection with HPC as well. So just more pictures of our flexible design ideas. This has been a common piece of the presentation. And then into our next steps. So we will continue to collaborate with HPC and the subcommittee on the materials. We made great progress in our last meeting, and just have a few loose ends to wrap up with them. We will be meeting with property and business owners as well to provide this update and discuss more technically about the truck movements and the South Tulane proposals. As I mentioned previously, we'll be back in March to request a council resolution of support for the intersection concept plan. And then Tagel's group will be moving ahead with the necessary approvals from HPC and the State Historic Preservation Office. She'll be finalizing the design so that we can be ready to bid summer, fall. McMahon Associates will be submitting our DOT access permits. And we've been told that it can be 9 to 15 months. So we are on the hopeful side that we will be completed by January 22 with that process so that we can begin construction next January. That's our current plan. Who knows what 2021 holds for us, but that's where we're at. So any more questions that I can answer for you tonight?
Doesn't appear that there are any right now.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to show where we're at, and we'll probably be back, I would hope, in a couple of months to give you another update.
Thanks, Deanna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you,
Thank
Dan.
you.
That's great.
Great.
Deanna, do you need me anymore or?
Nope. Thank you, Tejal.
Thanks,
you.
Tejal.
Nice seeing you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye, Tejal.
All right, we have an ordinance for public hearing up next. David, do you want to take this one as far as reading it off and explaining?
This is the modification to the bike parking ordinance. I've explained it before, but for anybody who wasn't here the last time I explained it, you may remember that we passed a bike parking ordinance, a townwide bike parking ordinance back in 2020. The university came to us with a request to add an option for a new or a different way for institutions of higher education to meet bicycle parking requirements, which would be based not on square footage of construction, which is the base method for calculating the parking requirement in the ordinance that was passed, but rather to use the campus population as a basis for calculating the number of bike parking spaces that would be required. And they proposed a very generous amount of bike parking based on the campus population. We actually, in the original bike pedestrian and bike advisory committee's recommendations and the old and the bike mobility plan's recommendations for parking, we had a standard like this, which came from research that from what we found in the Netherlands, which is really the world gold standard for bicycling facilities of all kinds. And so we were very receptive to the university's idea here. This allows them the flexibility of locating the bike parking spaces where they're most needed, rather than an equal number at, say, a biology lab as you might have at a dormitory. They can vary the amount of spaces that they need in different locations based on what they see their students using. So that's what's in this ordinance. It's just sort of an addendum to that other ordinance.
Thank you, David. Are there council questions on the ordinance? Okay, if not.
Mayor, just sorry to interrupt, but the formalities, we do actually need to read the title of the ordinance before you open the public hearing, the full title.
Okay, thank you. So ordinance 2021-01, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton regarding bicycle parking requirements for institutions of higher learning and amending Article 11 zoning in Chapter 10B of the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Okay, are there any members of the public that wish to comment or ask questions on this before we vote? Okay, Mark, can we bring in, I see a hand up. Okay, Kristen, I guess you came in first.
Sure. Mayor, Council, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, really, Kristen Applegate, Director of Community and Regional Affairs for Princeton University. Thank you for considering this ordinance this evening. I'd like to say a special thank you to Councilman David Cohen, who worked with myself and Ron McCoy and others from the university. We think this is a good way for the town and the university to work in partnership to ensure that there's adequate bike parking on our campus. And I think as Councilman Cohen has already noted, by tying this to our campus population, which does grow over time, ensures that irrespective of construction on campus, that our bike parking resources continue to grow. What I would anticipate is that we will include this report with the report that we already supply to the municipality regarding our Tiger Transit parking and transit demand management programs, because after all of these systems, whether it be car parking, bike parking, transit, these are all integrated and related systems. So thank you for considering this evening.
Thank you. Next for the public, Lisa there we go. Lisa, if you can unmute, there you go, unmute yourself, thanks.
Good evening. I'm speaking on behalf of the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee, and we'd like to applaud you for considering this novel and very advanced approach to bike parking formulas and calculations. As David mentions, it exceeds the gold standard, so we can't be more thrilled about it for both short-term and long-term parking, that is covered parking for students, for faculty and staff. We also very much welcome that this will be part of the annual review. And as you're probably aware, the university's program Revise Your Ride is an important element of its own strategic priorities to reduce the number of single occupancy vehicles moving through campus. And by providing this parking, you will definitely enable many more people to travel through and to the campus by bike or e-bike. And that just makes it a whole lot more achievable to reduce the single occupancy vehicles. Thanks again very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Are there any other public comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public part of the hearing, the public participation part of the hearing, and go to a roll call vote on the ordinance. Just one more time, there's no other council?
I think we need a
haven't
motion.
Introduced. We haven't.
We've
You gotta make a
introduced,
motion.
but we haven't moved to adopt.
Good point. Details.
I
Go ahead,
moved
David.
that we adopt.
I second.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we'll do a roll call vote.
Okay. Ms. Pearl-Ambrose,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Braga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes, and great work, David.
Ms. Sachs.
Yes, and great work, David, and Kristen too. Thank you.
And
Yeah,
Kristen.
thank you.
Okay, motion carries. Ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Next, we have two ordinance introductions. Dwayne, did you want to take the first one on the?
Sure. Essentially, ordinance.
Sorry to cut in again. You got to introduce it by title first.
Oh,
You have to read the title, Mayor, into the record before.
Right. So what I'm encouraging to happen here is a little change from in the past by inviting council members to take on ordinance introductions or whatever that they're involved with and asking them to actually do some of the reading. So the mayor is not the only one reading every item on the agenda, because I think people would like to actually hear other people besides the mayor. So council members,
Fair enough.
that is what I'm
As a-
attempting to do. If you don't wish to read the whole thing or have the agenda in front of you, just tell me and then I'll read it. But
Mark, you
Dwayne,
have such a great reading voice, but I'll read it, no problem. Okay, ordinance 2021-02, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton regarding Princeton's Affordable Housing Board and amending the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, and the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968, And it has listed here that the public hearing would be scheduled for, assuming it's introduced, the public hearing will be listed for March 8th of 2021. And essentially what this is I always say that one of the things that's wonderful about our town is that we're so blessed with so many people who have expert knowledge of the various areas of where council has to, or mayor and council have to make policy. And for the Affordable Housing Board, we wanted to accommodate the possibility of adding a third alternate member, and we had a particular person in mind. It was vetted by the chair and the membership of the board, and we're all think it's a great idea. So accordingly, we asked that our municipal attorney draft an ordinance to accommodate that, and so it would allow for a third alternate member on the Affordable Housing Board.
Thank you, Dwayne. Mia?
I have a
Welcome,
quick
Mayor.
question. I don't know if anyone has ever seen Jacob's Ladder, but I could have sworn that we had this. Didn't we already bring this to council, have the discussion and vote on it?
No. We introduced, what we did have was a discussion on whether or not we should bring the ordinance to council.
Oh,
That happened
okay,
a
but
few
we
weeks
did.
back.
I'm not imagining that. We had a
No. There was a discussion about it was a sort of like a very short work session.
okay. Phew,
Right.
great.
So
But we
since
didn't-
then, Trishka,
No.
as I'm sorry, did someone say something?
No, I was just going to say there was no, the discussion was just to start the action to do the ordinance.
Okay. but
That
we
is
didn't have-
correct.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Okay.
So
Good.
it's not like a weird type of deja vu or anything.
Okay.
And Dawn, thanks for clarifying that.
Are there other council questions or comments?
I just want to jump in that this in fact turned out to be a lot more complicated than originally intended and involved reconciling two ordinances and a lot more work. So Trishka, thank you so much for persisting through this, and better to do it right and get it done. So
You're welcome.
I was going to say I ditto that. I don't know if that's the correct verb, but I agree wholeheartedly with what Eve said. So thank you, Trishka.
Dwayne, do you want to
Thank you.
move the
Thank you both.
introduction of this?
Sure. I move to introduce, and I have to click back between screens here, to move ordinance 2021-02 I move to introduce ordinance 2021-02.
Thank you. Eve, is that a second?
it is. Thank you.
Okay, moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Ms. Pearl-Lambros,
Yes.
Ms.
I'm sorry,
Niedergang?
we don't have public comment?
Not on
On
introductions.
an introduction.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Ms. Niedergang?
I'm going to learn someday. Yes. Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Okay, that passes. I think I'll read the next one. I don't think that belongs to any particular council person. Ordinance 2021-03, refunding bond ordinance of Princeton in the county of Mercer, New Jersey, providing for the refunding of all or a portion of certain 2011 parking utility refunding bonds and general improvement bonds, Series 2011B, appropriating $10,150,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of Princeton of one or more series of refunding bonds in the aggregate principal amount of not exceeding $10,150,000 for the financing the costs thereof. Public hearing would be anticipated for March 8th, 2021. Any council or staff comments, questions? Michelle?
Well, I understand this will be saving some much needed dollars. So I just thought maybe if Sandy or Mark wanted to comment on it, I commend them for coming up with this and appreciate that. And if not, I'll make a motion to move it, but go ahead.
I can make just a couple of quick comments. This is
Thank you.
going to refund 2011B township bonds that were issued back in 2011, and then parking utility bonds that were in the borough. This is going to save us just shy of $875,000. So certainly in our best interest to do. So thank you for taking this into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank
Sandra.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy. Okay, Michelle, I believe you did make a motion to
I'll make a
introduce
motion.
this. Eve's
Yes.
got her hand up to second it.
And
Any other
thank you, Sandy.
questions? Thank you. Any other questions or comments before we vote? Okay, roll call vote on this.
Ms. Pearl-Ambrose,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Sacks.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. And just a word of thanks to staff for coming up with this. That's a remarkable amount of money to save over the life of the
Absolutely.
bonds. So it just goes to show the quality of the staff we have and the efforts they make all the time to try to do the best as when it comes to the finances of the town, which has a direct impact on the taxpayers at the end of the day by not
Absolutely.
spending $900,000 that we didn't need to. So
Absolutely.
thank you. Okay, we have a number of resolutions. Does someone from the Finance Committee want to take the first resolution, or
Sure. You want me to?
whoever?
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. So Resolution 21-65, a resolution approving professional services agreement for Hudilik and Morrison, PA, for purposes of preparing an audit and related financial services on behalf of Princeton in the amount of $54,200. And should I lead
Do you
with the
wa-
motion?
Do you want to move it?
I'll move it to approve if there's,
Yeah, is there a second on the motion? David seconds it. Questions, comments on the motion?
no, I'll just comment that we did discuss this in the Finance Committee and felt that there was a level of comfort. And there's a lot going on right now, so it's not a year to do any type of RFPs. And we're happy to move forward with this proposal.
Okay. All right, no other questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
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 That passes. Everyone said aye. Okay, I'll do the next one. 2166, resolution authorizing the execution of grant agreements for the Community Development Block Grant Program. So just on the block grants, it's time for the mayor to sign off on those with HUD, but we need to make sure that the mayor's authorized to do that. So we wanted to bring it back to council and make sure council actually does that. So we want to make sure everything's proper on that.
Okay.
So Leticia,
I just wanted to move.
thank you very
I'll
much.
second it.
Dwayne seconded. Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, everybody voted aye. That passes. David, do you want to do the next resolution on?
I would love to. Yes, thank you. This is Resolution 21-67. It's a resolution awarding vehicle lease agreement to Enterprise Fleet Management Incorporated. And I'll just make a couple of comments about it. This is something that the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee has been working on for over a year. And in particular, I want to thank Councilwoman Pearl-Ambrose, who's been a really strong supporter as we've tried to bring this to fruition. We see some real potential to in moving forward with this fleet management agreement with Enterprise to update and upgrade our fleet to make it more environmentally friendly, transition to alternative fuel vehicles, reduce our maintenance costs, and save the municipality a lot of money as we succeed in transitioning our fleet over to a leasing model. So that's what this is about. First step.
Yeah. And
Michelle?
I just want to second and thank Councilman Cohen for his leadership on this. Really spearheading it and pushing it and getting all the components done, continuing all the meetings that it took. We really believe that this is the way of the future with going EV, going more high tech, and needing to find outsource solutions. So thanks for all your hard work.
Okay, so just a specific, I'm sorry, Mia, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank both Councilman Cohen and Councilwoman Perron Lambros for their work on this. It was, maybe at least hundreds of hours, possibly thousands of hours that they spent on this. And I have to say, they both were so excited about it, and it's not the most compelling topics. So I'm really glad that they were so excited and able
It
to.
depends what you're into.
Right. So I'm really glad that they were really into it. They took one for the team, and so thank you very much.
I just have to respond. I have to respond, Mia, and say for Seth Frankel's benefit, he's an attendee. He's the sales rep for Enterprise. I spend hundreds of hours just talking to Seth without any of the other work involved.
So, okay, Eve, go ahead.
Well, I have a question. Actually, I think this has been brought up before, but at what point in this process might we see some actual EVs in the mix, since not this year?
Right, I don't believe there's any this year due to the fact that most of those under the buying agreement are no longer available. And I believe what we're doing is a smaller number of vehicles as a trial for initially to see how this whole program works out. And David, this does not include the maintenance component, right? This is just the.
That's correct. That's correct.
So there's a lot of work has gone into this. This is very good that we're trying this. I would say that there are some concerns about some aspects of the program, but taking this first step and seeing how the program works out will, I think, allow us to test it and see if it makes sense to expand it further in the future, and also give us a better opportunity to test some things that we might be able to do in-house. So anyway, this is a great solution at this time.
Yeah. And just to answer the question, in terms of, we need the infrastructure for charging and also the vehicles to be available. But everyone knows this is really a main priority is to move EV as quick as we can. So,
right. So
I'm not sure anyone actually read the resolution. Did I miss it?
I did.
Yeah, David did.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's fine. Okay, any other questions or comments before David moves this resolution? Okay, David, do you want to?
I move the resolution.
Thank you. And Michelle seconds the resolution.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's everybody.
Great job, David. and
Thank
Michelle.
you. Does anybody own I guess nobody owns the traffic signal one, do they? No, okay. Resolution 2168, resolution authorizing a contract with Edward H. Gray Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $19,540 for traffic signal electrical maintenance and construction services for a term of 10 months, March 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. I think that's pretty self-evident as to what that is. Does someone wish to move that resolution? Eve, thank you so much. Dwayne had his hand up next to second that. Any questions from council? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's everybody. That passes. Okay. Resolution, if anybody owns any of these, just tell me before I read them, but resolution 2169, resolution authorizing a supplemental professional services agreement in the not to exceed amount of $91,144 with T&M Associates for environmental permitting and bidding services, task 1 and 2, and add alternate related to the closure of the Princeton landfill on River Road. Mark, Eve, go ahead.
I just had a couple of questions that I sent earlier to Deanna and Mark, so just
Okay.
wondering if maybe those could be addressed. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes,
Deanna?
I can start in first. Ms. Niedergang had a question related to whether this was related to the illegal dumping at River Road. And I will say that it is not related to the illegal dumping. It is related to a notice that we received. It's covered in my memo. I think it was in 2011 regarding the landfill and some drainage issues. And that is what we are trying to address with this work. There was a question as to whether the cost of the work could any part of the cost be picked up by the owner of the solar array. I defer to Mark to answer that. I don't know how that agreement works out.
Under the agreement, the solar provider is required to maintain underneath the solar arrays if there's anything we need to do there, but the rest of the work is the responsibility of the town.
Thank you.
All of our work is actually around the solar array and not under. So that's the next answer. Just going back into your questions. Let's see, do we have estimates on how much the actual remediation work will cost and if any is covered by insurance? I don't know the answer on the insurance, but the cost for the remediation work, we are currently looking at almost $1 million to get us to the point of final construction and acceptance by DEP. We have between the permitting costs, the soft costs for the inspection, and then the construction costs, and a 20% contingency, that those are the numbers that get us up to approximately $1 million. And I think that covered all of your questions. Is that correct?
I just, the other, when do we envision, if everything goes well in this current inspection and kind of scope of work progress, are we envisioning the actual work getting done in 2021, 22, beyond, or just out of curiosity?
We're hoping for 2021. Summer into fall would be the best time. A lot of this work is related to moving earth. And so that would be the best time for us to get in and get the work completed.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there other council questions? Okay. Would someone move that resolution?
I'll move it.
Thank you, David. Eve's got her hand up to second it. Thank you very much. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's everyone. That passes. Thank you. 21-70, resolution authorizing a license agreement between Princeton and Trinity Church for Bank Street residential and business employee parking for a term expiring on July 31, 2021, assuming that it stops snowing and they can actually start real work on Bank Street at some point. Okay, are there questions on this resolution? Eve.
For a change. So I understand that this was done once before, also when there was construction on Bank Street, but I guess I'm curious as to what are the arguments for the municipality picking up the cost of parking, which really seems to me kind of more of an individual responsibility, and maybe there are arguments that I haven't thought of in that. Enlighten me.
I will. So this will be the third time that we have made provisions for parking by residents in the downtown area, so to speak. I think the first time was when we worked on Parkmore Van Divender. While we didn't necessarily incur costs to accommodate parking for residents that were displaced by construction activities, we did make provision so that they could have extended parking stays at various locations. I can't recall if we did allow parking, say, at the Park Place Yard or not. It's been a few years since that project. But most recently, when the water company came in 2019, we also made provision for the residents to be able to park and not incur cost related to parking fees. Bank Street is surrounded by paid parking, and some of the property owners do have driveways, and based on the narrowness of the roadway and the amount of activity that comes with a construction project, it's not feasible for a property owner to be able to come in and out of their private driveway. So if they need the use of their vehicle, they would have to move it prior to construction that day. And then because of our start times at 7 a.m., it can be sometimes easier for a resident to move their vehicle the night before, depending on their personal situation. So because there are construction activities that are impacting them, and in this case, in a monetary fashion, because they would then have to incur the cost of parking. We, in the engineering department, made provisions to provide alternative parking. At the time with the New Jersey American project, we actually purchased 18 monthly passes for the Chambers Street garage, and allowed the use of all of the parking spaces on the north side of Paul Robeson for the residents. So thereby we would not require payment in those metered parking spaces. And so looking to this year's project, especially because people are home more often because of COVID, we were again looking at options for movement of vehicles and parking of vehicles if they were needed during the day. And so we again identified Paul Robeson as an option. I think we've had some property owners ask about Chambers, so it may be that we switch between Paul Robeson and Chambers. And then we did look at the Monument Hall parking lot because that is free, but with the COVID vaccine clinics, there was concern that we may have vehicles parked there that would take space of the people that are coming in for the vaccine, and then having to move vehicles around and contact people in a sufficient time to get them moved. We may revisit that if there is the thought that our community vaccine clinic isn't coming back for a few weeks or a month. And then we also then looked at Trinity Church, because in the past we have had a permit parking program with them. And so there was a willingness to work with the municipality. Their cost for the off-street parking is less than we would have incurred at the Chambers Street garage. And there is the ability, at least during the week, to leave vehicles overnight. And that could be a bonus for the residents. So it was really just an accommodation to lessen the financial hardship on the residents for a municipal project. And we did also, just so you know, we looked at university options to see if any of their lots were available, but there was no availability for those either. So we really were stuck with needing to pay or forego payment at our own meters.
Okay, thank you for that. It's a very thorough explanation. I guess I'm struggling a little bit still with the basic premise. And I grew up in New York City where, nobody coddled you when it came to parking. For me, parking, 15 or 20 blocks away was a great coup. So I know that we're in a little bit of a different situation here. But I guess we now have at least 3 instances where if our construction projects are not necessarily ours, New Jersey American Water, or a construction project impacts residents, we are undertaking the financial burden to deal with their parking. And I'm not sure now is the right time, and I'm not going to object to this, but I think before we do this again, maybe I'm the only one who even wants to discuss this, but I feel like this is an issue that should be, I personally feel it's an issue that should be discussed about whether this is a responsibility that we should take on. And as I said, I mean, there may be facts that I'm missing, or, my colleagues may disagree with me, but maybe just kind of put a pin in it for if it comes up again, and maybe bring it up so that we can have a discussion, unless everybody's going to tell me no, just forget about it. It's small. It's not a large amount of money in the scheme of things, but I'm just kind of struggling with the concept. So thank you for your explanation. It's very helpful.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, would someone like to move the resolution? Leticia is moving it. Is there a second? David seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's everybody. That passes. Thank you. David, do you sort of own the Vision Zero Task Force?
Sure, I'll claim it. So this is resolution 21-71, resolution establishing a Vision Zero task force. And a brief explanation: Vision Zero is a philosophy of traffic and roadway management that basically believes that accidents or crashes are avoidable, that with proper design and proper policies, we can eliminate both deaths and serious injuries on our roadways. So council heard a presentation about this last year, I believe, and was supportive of the idea of creating a task force to create a Vision Zero action plan, which for Princeton, which would do further research and identify exactly what Vision Zero could mean in Princeton and what kinds of specific policies ought to be implemented. So this resolution is to establish that task force to work over the course of the coming year. I could go into detail about the composition of the task force. There are a number of representatives from different departments, from different community partners, and also some members at large from the community, and similar to the cannabis task force that Ms. Niedergang mentioned earlier in the evening. We will be putting together an application for members of the public who would be interested in filling one of those at-large seats. So that's what this is. And we have, well, so if I can move the adoption of this resolution forming the task force. And I do have some comments, written comments from the public that we received by email, which I will read once we have a second.
Okay, Dwayne seconded, so good to go, David.
Thanks. This first comment is from Laura and Rich Fredericks. I would like to thank you and voice my support for your resolution to establish a Vision Zero task force. am a part of the Vision Zero New Jersey Alliance, a group of dedicated individuals and organizations committed to help the state of New Jersey adopt Vision Zero. I lost my daughter, Emily, who was 24 years old, on November 28, 2017. She was cycling to work as a French pastry chef in Philadelphia when she was killed by the driver of a sanitation truck. My husband and I have become advocates for safe streets, not just safer streets, but safe streets. We live in East Brunswick, New Jersey, and are co-founders of Families for Safe Streets Greater Philadelphia. Thank you for your commitment to saving the lives of all who use our streets, and especially vulnerable road users. Sangeeta Badlani wrote, I am the founder of the Nikhil Badlani Foundation and Families for Safe Streets, New Jersey. Families for Safe Streets comprises victims and their families that have been affected by traffic violence. My 11-year-old son, Nikhil, was killed in a traffic car crash by a negligent driver, another to a reckless driver, and yet another to a drunk driver. Nikhil Badlani Foundation and Families for Safe Streets commends Princeton Council for recognizing the responsibility of our city, the responsibility our city has to ensure that community members can walk, bike, drive, and take transit safely to move about. By passing Resolution 2171, this strong message that zero is the right goal, shared now at the national level, should reinforce our commitment and encourage us to double down on actions that we know work to improve safety, such as graduated driver license law, designing complete streets that accommodate people walking and bicycling, lowering speed limits, and investing more in roadway safety in our most underserved neighborhoods. We, as members of Families for Safe Streets New Jersey, know the immense pain of loss. We urge you to pass the resolution and prevent tragedies like ours. John Boyle of the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia wrote, the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia supports Resolution 21-71, establishing a Vision Zero task force. Princeton will be the first community in the DVRPC region outside of Philadelphia to set a goal of zero traffic deaths and create an action plan to achieve it. We are grateful that Princeton is leading by example. The municipality's model could and should be replicated region-wide. Vision Zero is one of the Bicycle Coalition's core campaigns, and we hope that members of the Princeton community will be able to join our virtual Vision Zero conference during the week of March 22nd. Sonia Cesena, I hope I pronounced that right, from Tri-State Transportation wrote, on behalf of Vision Zero New Jersey Alliance, we'd like to submit comments in support of Resolution 2171, establishing a Vision Zero task force. We are thrilled to see Princeton recognize the importance of changing their approach to traffic safety and ending traffic deaths on their roads, and look forward to the action plan the task force would create by the end of the year. By passing this resolution, Princeton will be the third municipality in New Jersey that is looking at transportation as a more holistic system and approaching road safety as an equity and public health priority. In joining Hoboken and Jersey City, we hope that Princeton's commitment to its residents' lives will encourage other towns, counties, and the state to follow suit. With this task force, Princeton situates itself as a leader for Vision Zero, transportation, and equity in central New Jersey. The Vision Zero New Jersey Alliance is a coalition of diverse partners, including families impacted by traffic crashes, community members, advocates, policymakers, transportation professionals, public health professionals, and others who share the belief that every person in New Jersey deserves the right to travel safely each day without the risk of death or serious injury. We welcome any future opportunities to work with you on this important issue. And that concludes the written submitted comments.
Thank you, David. Any other, sorry, before we vote, any other council comments or questions?
There might be comments from the public.
Yeah, anyone?
I don't see any raised hands.
Yeah, I don't see any raised. Oh, here we go. Okay. Mark, can you let Lisa back in? There we go.
Good
Lisa?
evening, council members. Thank you again for considering this resolution. In your meeting tonight, you've mentioned pedestrian safety and traffic movements before we ever got to this resolution, which to me says that you're already on the way to thinking like a town that has adopted Vision Zero. So I'm thrilled. The Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee is thrilled. And we look forward to taking this to the next phase, establishing the task force and looking at specific policies from Vision Zero that can be applied here in Princeton. Thank you once again. And as you can see, there's much support for this initiative across the state.
Thank you, Lisa.
And I'd just like to say thank you so much to Lisa Sarasol, who's chair of the bike committee, who's done an extraordinary amount of work on both of the bike parking ordinance and in continuing to keep Vision Zero front and center before the town. I think it's been a couple of years now, actually, since it was initially raised as something that we should be doing. And so we really appreciate her tenacity and gentle persuasion. And I'm so thrilled that we're finally here because it's the right thing and I'm glad we're doing it. So thank you, Lisa.
And I would like to thank Councilwoman Sachs and Mayor Frida, who are going to be participating with this task force. And also to thank Greater Mercer TMA, which is the Greater Mercer Transportation Management Association. They've been actually a source of great expertise and support as we've worked to move this agenda item forward.
Any other comments before we vote? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that's everyone voted aye. That passes. Thank you. Do we have any changes to the consent agenda before we go through the consent agenda? Eve?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to remove Resolution 2174 from the consent agenda for a small amendment.
Okay. Is there any objection to removing that from the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll take that off the consent agenda for tonight.
We need a motion for that.
A motion to that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Eve, is that a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda without Resolution 2174.
I'll second it.
Okay. Dawn, is that acceptable or do we need a separate motion just to remove it?
No, that should be fine. And then you can just vote on the separate resolution.
Okay, so let's just real quick. So the other resolutions in the consent agenda are payment of the bills and claims, appointments to some of the boards, commissions, committees, ratifying an agreement for pumping services, emergency repair to sanitary sewer force main on Crooked Tree Lane, 2 resolutions for that, a transfer of money there, and I assume agreement with Central Waste, change order number 1, and resolution for traffic striping and pavement marking project.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I didn't get the second. I have that Eve made the motion.
That was Dwayne.
Thank
Dwayne
you.
second. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions or comments from you on council on any of the remaining items on the consent agenda? They're hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that looked to be everyone? Yes. Okay, everyone voted aye. The consent agenda passes with that one item removed. Hey, David.
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted. Come on, man. You got the spotlight.
Actually, this is Eve. Oh, I'm sorry. Eve wanted to make an amendment to that item that it got removed from the consent agenda.
Did you want it rescheduled? Is that what you meant, Eve, when you were?
Or do you want to make?
No, I just want to make a small amendment. And
So still on the
Oh,
agenda.
I'm sorry. You want to make an amendment
I'm
tonight?
sorry. Yeah, I'm
My
sorry.
bad.
Were you moving to
Okay.
dismiss? I missed it. I was focused on my moment here.
Yep, no, please
So
go right ahead.
it's a very tiny change. So Resolution 2174, resolution endorsement of the application of the Princeton Environmental Committee and Friends of Princeton Open Space for a $1,500 grant from ANJEC for the restoration of riparian areas along the Mountain Brook within the Billy Johnson Mountain Lakes Nature Preserve. And I just would like the record to reflect that it is a commission, not a committee. So I just want that very small change made, and I would like to vote to support the resolution with that minor change.
Thank you. Eve.
Second,
David seconds. Everyone got the change committee to commission? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's everyone. That passes.
move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 There we go. Thank you all. Thank you to the public that
Great night,
attended.
everyone. Take care.
Everybody have a good evening.
Good night.
Thank you very much.